best ways that I've seen recently about spreading the word about Nubia has been in the article in National Geographic by Robert Draper. If you have not yet seen that, you need to see the cover story of this month's National Geographic on the Black Pharaohs of Egypt, who were Nubian. Robert Draper is here with us this evening. He's been a correspondent for GQ magazine and a reporter for Texas Monthly.
Nubian history is really of singular importance, not only because it offers definitive proof of a civilization that once ruled Egypt and left behind a stunning, if mostly destroyed, array of artifacts and architecture, including, as I mentioned, these magnificent pyramids, but a history that proves as well that this particular civilization survived autonomously and survived for thousands of years, not as a copycat of Egypt, but with its own discrete customs, with its own burial rites and its construction customs. In particular, and this is sort of what my story had honed in on for National Geographic, the 25th dynasty, the reign of the so-called Black Pharaohs some 2,800 years ago, was one that was a remarkable subset of African history, and one in which we saw these very, very sort of fabulous and powerful and as well as enlightened pharaohs, such as Taharka and his father, Pia. Unfortunately, as great as this history of Nubia is, it's a very obscure history. It's one we've only seen in fragments for a variety of reasons. First and foremost, because like most people who are conquered, the Nubians and their history were very much driven underground by the Assyrians, by the Egyptians, and others. And as a result, some of these great pharaohs, like Pia, for example, we don't even know what he looks like. Also, of course, climate had something to do with further obscuring what was left of the artifacts, but really more than anything else, it was the human damage done to this history. And to some degree, America plays a role in this, since it was the great Egyptologist George Reisner from Harvard who first made these a lot of remarkable discoveries in Kerma and elsewhere, but at the turn of the century, but who immediately interpreted these discoveries as evidence of a civilization that, because of its cleverness, because of all the remarkable things he saw, could only have been Caucasian. And so this was a belief that persisted for decades upon decades. And as a result, the historians sort of flip-flopped, as it were, that whenever they saw proof of something remarkable, an architecture or an archaeological discovery, they believed it must have been Egypt-driven. Whenever they saw evidence that the Nubian history had declined, and the 25th dynasty had collapsed, for example, it must have been, they figured, an example of the Caucasian leaders of the Nubians intermarrying with the inferior Africans. This persisted really until the Americans actually had some major role in correcting this in 1978, when the Brooklyn Museum had its breakthrough exhibit, Africa in Antiquity, which I think really laid the foundation for bringing into the public eye Nubian history. Unfortunately, around this time, there had already been one dam built, this one in Egypt, the Aswan Dam, consigning a lot of lower Nubia to underwater. And now, of course, as has been referenced, the Sudanese government is about to follow suit with a hydroelectric dam, which would create a 108-mile lake, after which the fourth cataract area of Nubian history, much of which has not been explored, would go the way of the Atlantis. This, I think, would be a terrible tragedy on the historical and civic level, and I'm really encouraged to see, just from a humanistic standpoint, that congressmen such as Congressman Franks and Congressman Catalano are leading the charge on this, and I certainly hope that, of course, the good news whenever something like this happens, albeit good news that arrives too late, is that there's a scramble among archaeologists to try to preserve whatever can be preserved. This happened with the Aswan Rescue Project, and now the Merowe Salvage Project is underway. And it's a bit of a bittersweet thing, because they're discovering some remarkable things that they had no idea existed in that area, including perhaps evidence of pyramids around the fourth cataract, which heretofore had been undisclosed. The question remains what else is under there and whether we'll be able to get to it in time. Hopefully, due to movements like the one that's underfoot here in the Rayburn building, that will indeed come to pass. Thank you all very much.
Another person who is helping to preserve the culture and civilization of Nubia is LA Times photographer Carolyn Cole. Last summer, she traveled to Nubia. Her photographs are here, as I said, and you can find the article they were in online at latimes.com. So Carolyn, would you please come and tell us about your photographs?
Last time we decided to go up and do a story on the Nubian situation. In June was when there was a peace rally, a protest, I should say, in Cebu, where 4 people were killed. So that was part of the reason why we're going into that region. It's a long drive from Khartoum, and we arrived at night. Our host kept us, it was a very quiet visit. We weren't announcing our arrival because journalists are really not allowed to travel to that area at this point. In the morning, we wanted to see the actual area where the dams were going to be constructed, so we started driving north. It was only a few kilometers from Cebu where they were going to construct this. There were already about 400 soldiers in that region camped there to protect the Chinese workers. The school pictures that you see are in Cebu, and of course the children are not taught their native language, they're taught Arabic, so they're losing their culture in the schools as well. I think while I was there for one night and the morning the next day, I saw only one tourist. So these are real treasures, and it's a terrible situation, not only for the Nubian people, but also for these antiquities that I feel are definitely under threat. So thank you very much for having me.
Professor Khalid Kodi is an accomplished Sudanese artist and activist. He is an adjunct professor at Boston College and Massachusetts.
I would like to thank you all for coming and participating in this important cause that very much unites so many people from very different places. When we say things about Nubia, we talk about human heritage, we talk about 2,500 years ago.
We have developed a unique way of seeing life, practicing it, spreading it, and enjoying it. Now this is quite seriously threatened. Those people, when they are scattered there, they will lose their institutional memory. They will lose their languages, and they stop dreaming in their mother tongues. They will stop dreaming in their mother tongues, and this is an abhorrent thing to happen to any human being. So for this all reason that we have been talking about real things, tangible cultures, but the scar that will never go away is when you don't know anymore who you are, when you are being robbed of your identity, which is culture, which is what makes you a human being. The world will be poorer if that intangible culture is wiped off. The world will be poorer if we stop feeding in our colorful and our marvelous